Welcome to A Bit of Board Games, a casual podcast documenting the many failures and hopefully successes of Waffle Games, as we learn the ins and outs of board game design and self-publishing. Join us on this journey as we talk about a bit of life, a bit of design, and a bit of board games. Welcome back to another episode of A Bit of Board Games. This is episode 56, and it is May 17th. 2023, and I am Steven, game designer and artist, and here once again
Ralph
is Ralph.
Yep, it's Ralph. I'm art director. I need to
keep
that at the top of my
I'm
head,
creative director and game designer and artist. And
yes,
sorry, there's something. Most beautiful member of the team, obviously. But yeah, Martin.
I'm
Ralph,
art director.
I did it again.
We got into this the other day a little bit, but
Yeah.
what I forgot to say is I don't particularly mind if people call me Martin still. It's not really a huge deal for me.
But it's more about consistency on here. I already confused Trevor because I'm like, oh, I was talking to Martin, and then I'm like, oh, I was talking to Ralph. So
right.
For consistency, we'll just we'll do Ralph. But anyway, Ralph, art director, I interrupted him and we're here. But we're chatting today about stuff, and we're glad you're here. So last time we talked about Dishonored, and Ralph had something that he wanted to add to that. So he said if it came up organically, we could talk about it. So here it is.
There it is. Well, thanks for that. I couldn't believe that we had the whole segment talking about like comparing different types of games, and we had Dishonored was specifically brought up, and when I listened back, I couldn't believe that I didn't make the connection and compare it to Redfall, which just dropped, and it had I mean, if you know anything about what's going on in gaming right now, you understand how disastrous the release has been for Redfall.
Not good.
Yeah, just technical issues. It runs like crap, and the whole decision to move to open world and make it a looter shooter. I mean, I'm all for studios wanting to branch out and trying new things, but this one just specifically felt like this top-down decision because someone had the brilliant idea who just like looked up, oh, what's making money? It's like looter shooters, games as a service, and they just, that's what's making money. So we'll just make that and we'll put our best studio on it. And it just feels like a hollow, passionless kind of project, and it's open world. And so if you take those and you compare it to like stuff Arcane has done in the past, like Dishonored or like Prey, there are other games, that they do well at, and it just feels like they don't even care about the game because they haven't poured the same love that they've poured into, their other games.
Yeah, that's hard. I mean, because the concept of it and like the stuff, like the early things I saw like a year or two ago, like it looked really cool. Like I'm like, oh, like this could be something cool. I like some looter shooter games, and so like I think if it was executed well, then like it could have been good. But I think like you're saying, it was just like maybe they relied too much on the open world of people can explore, but not as much of like what they're known for, which is kind of those meticulously built levels with multiple avenues of like approaching things. And if they didn't put that same level of detail into like every area of the larger scale worlds, then it just kind of feels bland. Like
yes, yeah, dude, totally. And that's the thing is Dishonored and there are other games that are more focused. It's like they do have more of a niche appeal. It's not the most broad audience that they're going to reach, but they cared about it and it's felt like passion projects.
Yeah.
So this one just felt, again, I have liked a couple looter shooters and stuff in the past too, but this one specifically just felt like every decision they made was for the purpose of more broad appeal. And so they just took out they just took their this Arcane and they put them on this project, and it felt like they missed it. It's just, it doesn't feel like the same attention and care and detail was put into this one. And I don't know. I mean, but not to mention the thing when you follow studios. Okay, don't I would caution people on, not that anyone's doing this, but I'm just saying, like, I've heard people say, "Oh, Arcane totally betrayed us," and like, look what they've done here. It's like,
Yeah.
well, do you really think the same people who worked on Dishonored or some Arcane game that you love, they're all still there working at Arcane? They're probably not. In almost every
Yeah.
case, it's like some of the developers move on to other projects. And I'm
Right.
pretty sure that that's been the case here. I don't think it's not the same team. It's
Right.
just not.
Yeah.
Still called Arcane, but you know.
Yeah. It's disappointing. You know, I think it could have been really cool. I think, again, you know, it's just about that being intentional with the game design and everything that we talked about last week. But that is not the topic of today's discussion. So
Right.
um last week was a pretty rough week for me. So first of all, my parents were in town last week. That is not why it was rough. Let me stop right there. My parents were coming to visit from New Jersey, so they were gonna come see the grandbabies, King Henry and I guess Queen Cece. I guess we never really did that because Cece was already born. When the podcast started, but and anyway, they came to kind of see us and see the grandbabies, and came out to visit. So we're excited. It was gonna be a lot of fun. Drive, pick them up from the airport, get home, and like literally within minutes of being home, I got hit with a stomach bug, and just like it took me out. Like for 2.5 days, I barely got out of bed except for when I urgently needed to. But we won't talk about that. Barely got out of bed and like slept for like almost the entirety of 2 days. Didn't eat solid food I tried eating solid food like the third day, and it was just not working very well. So it was like it was almost 4 days without eating food, like solid food, that I went. I had like some soup with like some noodles and stuff. So I guess there was like, and like some crackers that were mushed up in it. So there's like a little bit of substance to that. But man, it was like 4 rough days, and then day 5 I was like alive. Like 4 and 5 I was kind of up more, and I only napped like once each of those days. Which like I hate napping. I don't usually nap in general. But
Right.
I was just so wiped out. Like it was rough. So the first like over half of the trip that my parents were here, like I barely saw them, didn't get to hang out. They got time with the kids, and somehow like no one else got sick. My wife got sick for like a day, and then was fine. Not that I'm like upset about that. It's just kind of ridiculous that no one else got this, because it hit me like all of a sudden. So it was a rough week, and so that's why if you guys noticed, the podcast was late. Didn't get it out till like Sunday. Ralph and I had recorded it on like Monday, and then I started editing on Tuesday, but then I got caught up in some other things, and then like was taken out. So like Sunday morning or something, I like had some time, or I don't know, Saturday or Sunday, I had some time where I'm just like, I'm just gonna edit this, like, and then I like sat at the chair and edited it, and it just felt awful after. But I got it. I did it for the people. So made it through there, but did not work on anything then. And even the week leading, like before all that, you know, I like had intentions of working on some of the illustrations and different things, and I had started. I actually kind of forgot that got a chunk of the rule book worked on, which I think we might have talked about last week too. But um, like in the actual layout and kind of orderly and nice, so that it's like legible for us, and then for anyone that we hand it off to for a print and play or something. Um, but it didn't touch that. Like didn't think about it. I like couldn't even like watch a show on my phone. It was just like too much for me. I'm just like I can't look at things. I can't do things. I just slept. Um, once I was sick again. But yeah, so that's like a couple of weeks of not doing stuff. But it was something that just like we realized, we can't worry about that kind of stuff because there's gonna be curveballs in life. And you notice Trevor hasn't been on here for a couple weeks either because he just needed kind of a mental break because he just had a lot going on in his life as well. So like life's gonna happen. So when you have projects you're working on and stuff, it's not. You don't feel like you need to just constantly be working on it when you have free time. Like you need to give yourself a break, and you need to allow yourself to feel like that's okay. And like I feel like when working on stuff, sometimes you're like, oh, like I need to do this every day. I need to work on something every day, and like you can, but you also don't want to burn out and then never finish it. So that's what's been going on in my life. Ralph, how you doing?
Better than you.
Yeah, didn't take
I
much to be better. So last week.
Yeah, I mean, this week has been a little bit of a halt in progress, I think, for both of us. It's like last time we filmed, we at least had worked on the cards a little bit and
Yeah.
got like new kind of art direction and things like that. This week it's not the case. We don't really have much progress necessarily. And on my end, it's more like just at work we're doing like this crazy huge project. It's the biggest one we ever do. We do it once every 2 years, and this year I am kind of doing a good amount of the work on that one. So that's going to occupy the next little bit for
Yeah.
me for sure. But I'll be celebrating in, I guess, after the end of June when that'll be
Nice.
delivered. Not saying that I won't be able to work on anything until after June,
Yeah, we'll
the
have
end of
some
June.
stuff.
But that's when it's due. So I can't wait till it's done.
Yeah.
But yeah, so mine is more of just a regular kind of work, the ebb and flow of work. Right now we're kind of heavy. So
Yeah. Yeah, there's and like even outside of that too, like I know some people just with like passion projects, hobbies, different things like that, you can get I don't know, spread too thin is not necessarily the word I'm looking for, but working on games, I know it's easy to just like start working on your game design, your game idea, and then when you get a new idea, you drop this one and just go to the next one too. And I've been guilty of that for sure. Um, but that's we've talked about this before. How like we chose to work on Forge Trials as a game to get our feet wet and to learn the process, and then it became something that we really loved as well. Um, but I think there's a balance to strike of like we want to get this done like we want to see it to fruition and see it like all the way through while also not feeling like we're getting bogged down in it, so like we need to make sure we have some room for breathing in there without losing momentum. um and like I think we've done a good job of that. I think there's times where it's like Trevor and I wished we maybe had worked on stuff a little more at certain times, but like again, being our side thing, it's not like our main focus on everything, and having kids and all that too, but and having families. uh yeah, anyway, kind of just rambling there, but that being said, I had mentioned that we have another game idea that Trevor and I had worked on for a while before, and actually funny enough, Ralph was helping us with this game 2.5 years ago, before we like officially did Bit Waffle Games. And so
Yeah.
he was helping out with this a little bit on the art, and we like we didn't have the the motivation or the drive. We didn't have like the structure in place, I guess, to do that, like to see that game through. But we really love the game. That's going to be our second game we're going to work on. And I'm still excited about it. And randomly, I'll just be inspired by it and be like, just thinking about it, and just, or inspired by some other game mechanic or some other game idea. And I'm like, oh, like, dude, what if we add this to that game? And like, or like not like adding more stuff, but in a way of just like, it inspires some design thought or design idea where it's like, what if that idea that we had, what if we did it like this, or like as a result? And so when I was driving the other day, I did like a voice memo. I read this off to Ralph earlier. I did like a voice memo to like capture my thoughts of what I was thinking about, and I read through it afterwards, and it could not understand a word of it. It just like looked ridiculous. It was like something about trout, and like it just had wrong words and different things. It was pretty funny, but I sifted through it today to try to decipher it, and I think I got a good idea of
Oh,
uh what I was.
you cracked the
I
code?
think I cracked the code, man.
Alright.
So anyway, all that looping it around. There's gonna be things like curveballs of life are gonna come. So you kind of
Yeah.
figure out how to roll with it, and you know, deal with what you need to, and then keep working on stuff. But still, like,
Yeah.
we're
I
still
mean,
just as excited to work on everything. So
yeah, yeah. And you're totally right. Something you said about like spreading yourself too thin, that is a concern.
yeah,
That can happen, especially if you're a person who enjoys creative things and you have like the tools to do it.
yeah,
That becomes an issue because it's like there's so many different ways you could apply that. Sometimes you end up signing up for too many,
yeah,
and you've really got like as I get older, the older I get, the less maybe this is bad, but the less I will commit to like an actual thing that I'll pursue.
oh no,
You
I
know,
think it's a great thing.
yeah, you have to say no a lot. I guess like learning to
Yeah,
say no to yourself or to someone who just has some random idea or
yeah,
you know. You have to really figure out what's important, what's going to stay being important to me, you
yeah.
know, and then but
I love trying new things, and like I've got different hobbies or interests or different things that I'll be like, oh, like that could be cool. But then I'm like, okay, but what do I want to do? Like, I really want to make games and like do that stuff.
right.
So if I pick this other thing up, that's gonna take away time from that. And so there's been multiple things of like things that I know I would really enjoy, and it would be like be a good time and like with some good people, and but I'm like I need to say no to that because it's just another thing in my life that like I just can't keep adding more and more things like that. But
Yeah, and if you do, even if you were to like do the nice thing and just agree to do something, it's actually not because your heart won't be in it, right? If you're actually spreading yourself too thin and like doing a favor for
mhm.
someone, but you've gone past your limit, you're not doing them any real favors because your heart won't be in it. You won't be doing a good job. You won't be fully there, and they can probably tell, and
Yeah,
it just becomes more of an issue as time goes on.
yeah.
So
Anyway, there's some life. Was there advice in there? I don't know if there was advice in there.
no,
Some motivational words uh of our lives. I don't know. Um,
some drama,
there's the dirt of
the dirt. Yeah.
I don't know. Ralph and I were chatting earlier today, and while we were chatting, we were looking at this game on Kickstarter, which led to me looking at other games on Kickstarter, which led to finding an interesting board game on there, which is a board game for Apex Legends. Which, if you're not familiar with, Apex Legends is a uh, one of the more popular battle royale first person shooter game. So it's like a hero shooter battle royale. So like each player chooses a specific hero who has their own abilities and plays differently. You build together a team of 3 people. Most of the time it's just the trios, and then it's a battle royale. You set into the map, or you go into the map and then try to be the last one standing. So they made a board game, and it looks incredible. Like the level of detail in this is insane, and the quality of everything looks ridiculously polished and really really well done. Granted, they had characters and 3D models with their abilities and like artwork and all this stuff too, so they could kind of utilize a lot of that in all their cards and layouts and designs and stuff. But like they did some things that I've never seen before. So like each player has their player board, but it's like a diorama, like a 3D set with the character in set inside there, and then you can pull the character out, and it has like a circular base that just like fit in there to match the surroundings. But then you pull that out to use it, and you use it in the game. And then the same thing with like their ultimate ability, like has a icon to represent where it's placed in the map, or like a mini, and that's inset into their diorama. It looks so freaking cool. So it has like, it's really complex, maybe.
For sure.
And like, yeah, it's so different because it essentially feels like you're playing a mini version of D&D, like a small scale battle of like Dungeons and Dragons, where someone like sets this up, and you have like a map, and they have 3D structures in place out there, with barriers and different things, and then your characters are out there, and you like play different cards to do different abilities and do things. But they have their combat system is super interesting and unique. But like it kind of does a good job of capturing that main, like the fast-paced like shooter, like the main game loop that they have there, which is like finding better gear, fighting people, and like surviving. I guess killing people is just like the main loop. Loop there is just getting better gear and then winning.
That's how they would probably market it.
Right. Murder and be better at it. So and so like it's surprising like how kind of well it seems to represent how it represents the game. Yes, like you have your legend, the Apex Legends, and they have their own unique abilities, which they have their own decks of cards of things they can do, and their own miniature and all that stuff too. Then you have this 3D game board that like you can like adjust and move around and everything, with this 3-dimensional terrain and cover and everything too. So like I still don't fully understand how it all connects and works, but it also like does the stuff with like the ring where like it shrinks, and so it brings people closer together like a battle royale would, but set in this like small environment. And then there's like things to loot around and move around. You can use stuff and attack things, use their abilities. I'm kind of looking at the Kickstarter like right now.
Yeah,
it's super interesting.
This isn't all from memory.
You know, most of it was, because most of it was
I guess
just
actually,
me spitting gibberish. But
right.
Okay, so here, very interesting. Like they've got this interesting combat system, like where they've got cards that have it's crazy. They have a different card for each of the weapons, and so like I guess when you find that weapon, you have that card next to your player board. But then like in Apex, you can get different attachments and different quality of attachments for your weapon. And so like on here, they've got little tokens to represent, like you get like a blue or a purple or white attachment that gives you some boost to that. Like there's one of the guns, the star L star. I saw you could add a token that like adds extra stability to it, which I guess does something with like affecting maybe how accuracy of it or something. So I don't know how the combat works like between.
Have you played it? The game,
the video game? Oh yeah, I used to play it a lot actually.
Oh really?
Yeah,
I didn't know that.
Yeah, I had a couple buddies that we would play it like like a lot for a chunk of time. We
Okay.
played earlier on when it came out, and then stopped for like I was like 4 years, and then it was still going. We saw something about it, like a new update, and we're like, let's go check it out because it's free.
Yeah.
And then we played it for like a long time, like again, and I got pretty decent at it. It was a lot of fun. But anyway, very interesting. I'd recommend looking it up, if not just for like the uniqueness of it.
Just the spectacle. It's quite a lot
Yeah,
to look at.
and you have like your player board that has your inventory of like shield rechargers and like health and like shows your what level helmet you have and your armor and your size backpack. I don't know, dude. It's not size backpack, but it's crazy. So I gotta watch some gameplay videos on it at some point just to see how they do some stuff. Like that's one of my favorite things is just learning about these new ways that somebody's doing either combat mechanics or just gameplay in general. And this feels like a very unique, like something. It feels very new to me. I'm not gonna get it because I don't want to spend money right now, and also I have like 6 games over here that I haven't opened
Got a
and
backlog.
haven't played, dude. I have a stupidly big backlog.
Who doesn't have a big backlog for something, for
Yeah,
whatever that
yeah. I think I got like 4 or 5 new games at Christmas. Like
is?
3 of which are just very big, like campaign games.
Yeah.
Frosthaven right there.
I know Frosthaven, yeah.
I opened it one time and opened the box. I opened the box lid and like
The first step.
took something out, and I'm like, I can't do this. I don't know where. I don't have anywhere to put it, and it'll never leave. So someday I'll get to it. But anyway, that kind of
Frosthaven, a game you can play solo.
yeah, you can do it
Yeah.
solo.
Okay.
I think my wife would like it. I think if I got her into it, she would like it. So then if we could have a place where like kids and cats wouldn't bother it, then
Right.
we
You
could
could
just
leave
leave
it.
it set up.
Right. Yeah. The basement or
Yeah, I mean, like there's some
attic.
place. Yeah, the attic. You can only access through our garage, and like to get in the attic doesn't even have like a drop down ladder. We just put a ladder underneath, and I have to kind of like push myself up into it.
Mine is super annoying to get into as well. It's not in the garage. It's just in the hallway. Like at the end, there's not a ladder, but it's just this thing. I have to bring my ladder in there.
Yeah,
It's a process to get up there. I guess it's not that hard, but it's not convenient either.
yeah.
So,
So when we were chatting about anyway, so this is kind of a video game turned into a board game, maintaining a
yeah.
lot of its core elements. It seems like.
Yeah.
So
Mm.
we both have a lot of experience with video games. You don't have a ton of experience with board games, which could actually make this more interesting. What? How do you think? So you brought this up earlier. You intro it. How do you want to do it? About the completionist stuff.
Oh yeah. I drew a total blank there. Yeah, so this was just something I was curious about, and I asked Steven right before this what he thought about it, because I'm curious. Steven has brought it up for himself in the past. I've heard him say it on the podcast that he's somewhat of a completionist when it comes to video games, and he likes that element of it. It's part of why it's hard maybe for people like him and myself to stay engaged with like maybe a large open world style game, because the completionist aspect really gets old after a while with those kinds of games. But so to just to mention, I am also that way. I really love completing games to the 100% mark. I guess the way that you can mark that in different ways, that can mean different things to different people.
Sure.
The way I measure it is just and I think the way we both measure it is usually with achievements. Or if you're on PlayStation, it would be like trophies. And if you're on Nintendo, you're screwed because they don't have a system like that.
Certain games have them built in to their own interface.
Yeah,
but
they'll have like
not all the
challenges or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love. I just beat a game to completion last night. I finally finished Ghost Song, which is like this Metroid style.
Oh, cool.
Game like the old the side-scrolling Metroids. It's very much in that vein.
Hmm.
It's okay. I wouldn't. It's nothing to fall all over yourself trying to play or anything, but it's all right. And it's but yeah,
Rave
but just something
approval
about
from
completing a game
Ralph.
all the way.
Yeah,
What was that?
I said rave approval from Ralph. It's okay.
It's okay. I didn't hate it. It's certainly, if you like Metroid style games or like even Metroidvania, you know, the exploration, it's got a good art style. I would give it a recommendation. It's definitely worth your time. I don't know if it's worth completing, you know, but again, for me, it's like completing a game gives it an added value for some reason. There's something about just marking it
Yeah,
off your list completely that
yeah,
feels really gratifying, especially if it's somewhat challenging or
Hmm.
because that's the thing, it engages your brain in a way that just playing through a game really doesn't, because it will force you to mess with usually all of the mechanics of a game that most people might ignore, or you just wouldn't do that naturally. There's a lot of stuff about completing a game that's quite fun.
yeah.
Then again, there's the flip side of that, which
Feels
it
like you
can be,
have to at sometimes. You're just like,
it can, it's a chore.
it's a
It can be a
chore. Yeah,
chore.
yeah,
So I don't know. It's like you have to know when the healthy amount of
yeah,
trying to complete a game is over, and you've reached the no, this is not good.
yeah. That's.
But
Go ahead.
no, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say that's the difference in board games. I think is that some of them, you know, are played more regularly. If you have a game that's like a campaign game like Frosthaven, like you might have a group of people that meets once a week or regularly to do that. But that has that kind of legacy campaign type thing where like things you do carry over long term and affect that. And so there's, you know, certain things you can track achievements. So here's one thing, like they do have achievements in that game. And I don't know if they call it
Frosthaven
yeah, like Gloomhaven, Frosthaven, those
or
games
Gloomhaven? Yeah, yeah.
where they have, I don't know if they call them achievements, but essentially like there's this game world, this game map in that, like this big map board in there in those games. And in Gloomhaven, if you accomplished certain things in scenarios or like found certain like a certain place or something, it would be like, hey, like put this achievement sticker or whatever on your board. And like at the top of the board, they were kind of like they were all like flags, I think, like banners. And at the top of the board, they had like silhouettes for all of those. So it would like tell you which one to do. So it works similarly like that for those games. Um, with other games, I think one of the issues, like it'd be hard to mimic that kind of thing because a lot of board games people play a handful of times, like, or they get a game they played a couple of times, and so like, you know, maybe adding something with achievements could add more replay value.
I wonder.
But here's my counter argument, and then we'll talk about the pro argument. Is that, yeah, that's the opposite, sure. It's like they're not played frequently enough, and sometimes if you do a game night, if it's not with the same people, like you might not feel as drawn to do that because it's like, oh, you're teaching the game to a new group of people playing the first scenario again. Another game night, maybe play another scenario. So like if it's engaging enough and like draws people in enough, totally, I think you could totally add some kind of achievement element to that and stuff too. Or like we were just saying, well, I stop countering myself. Okay, yeah. Anyway, it might not be played frequently enough. That's kind of like the negative to that. But you were about to say, what were you about to say?
Well, I was just saying, like it. That's why I'm curious. Is because when you buy a board game, when do you feel like you've gotten the experience of the game, like to the fullest, basic?
Yeah,
Like, because with video games, it's sort of digitally tracks your
yeah,
certain things, certain numbers, and so you can and it'll pop an achievement, and you get that feedback.
right.
What's the equivalent in real life? Because it's like if you play a game 3 times, some people might say that like, oh yeah, I've played the game, but other
Right.
people might be like, I haven't played it enough to really get the my money's worth or
Sure.
whatever.
Some of that could be, yeah, I mean, playing it enough to get to feel like you get your money's worth. Like, again, hard if you're playing with different game groups. Certain games like, have you ever played Sushi Go?
Not
You should get that one. It's a super fun like party game that like we've played with anyone, and it's just a lot of fun. But that game, like,
too.
I would play over and over again. But it's because it's simple and I could just pick it up and we play it. But like I'm not looking to complete anything. The
Yeah.
other types of games that have more campaign type things, it fits in well with that kind of thing. Um, but I'm even thinking like there's these games called Zombicide. Um, you need to be more of a game nerd, Ralph. We need to get you in there more. Uh,
I know.
and
Yeah, I do.
where Zombicide is, there's a series of bunch of scenarios in this book, but they're all isolated. So you kind of choose which scenario you want to do separately. And so like in this rulebook, you're like, hey, I want to do scenario 6. It's like a hard rated one, um, and whatever. So like you set it up, do all that stuff, like those kind of things with different scenarios. The earlier ones are easier and they get more difficult. Like you could pop in and just do one of those scenarios anytime and play with a different character, different things. So like you could have individual achievements based on scenarios or something there of like, hey, like complete this without taking damage, or like, and so like those kind of ones that would actually work great because then you're like doing that for a challenge for that specific scenario. And so that kind of thing could be really interesting. It could work for some of our games. I think it'd be really fun to look at how to incorporate those, like, because Trevor and I talk about this all the time, how like we want to incorporate, we love video games and wondering how do we incorporate video game elements to board games. um and that would be one kind of side thing that would be a lot of fun that could add some replay value. So it maybe not in Forge Trials as much, but or at least not, maybe in the solo mode there could be some good like achievements to try for that with the different bosses and stuff. That actually could work,
Yeah.
could be cool. But in like the main mode where it's like multiplayer, it's like 4 different people. Like how do you, like what kind of achievement are you getting, and like how do you track those? Is it like you rip, it's like a little notepad with a bunch of sheets on it, like that achievements, and you can just like check off like I got this achievement, and like, but then it doesn't feel, it feels worthless because it's just like a bunch of the same things that are like extra feats you're trying to accomplish in those games, and it's so random. I don't know.
And who's to stop you from cheating, so to speak? Like,
Yeah.
because one of the things about achievements is you can cheat some of them, I think, if you exploit
Oh
systems
yeah.
of the game or like
Yeah.
go into the actual code or whatever. But the thing is, most people won't do that, and so there's a pretty good bet that if you have an achievement and all your friends can see it on your gamer score or whatever, that's the reason to like go for them.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
but maybe the answer is because you talked about something about the difference of different kinds of games. Some games really don't need that kind of thing. They don't need achievements like board games, right? Like a simple one, like the Sushi Go,
Yeah.
something
Yeah.
like that. But the more campaign driven ones or something story driven or a legacy style game like you were telling me about earlier, those, I feel like what it should come down to is maybe just the ultimate progress you can make in the game.
Yeah.
The
Yeah. Yeah.
whatever the furthest you can get. Like if the game is all about, if it's a story related game, maybe the ultimate achievement is just beating the final boss or
Right.
something. Or like like just some end goal. Or like for Forge Trials, maybe it's achieving master status for being the best
Yeah.
forger you can
Well, I
be.
mean, yeah, one of
Something
the
like that.
goals would be, yeah, winning, or like that's like the main thing is to
And you
be
can
the winner.
Yeah, and you can just add something simple like a little token that you can add to your card or something like that. It doesn't have to be this super robust thing every time, probably.
I just thought of something
Uh,
really cool.
yeah.
I don't know if it's like financially reasonable. But like in some game where like maybe you have achievements and like certain things where it's like you have a checklist of things and it's like, hey, if you do this in the game,
Hmm.
you get this like this pin. Like and you have like crafted
Yeah,
pins of like that achievement like icon on it.
that'd be cool.
And then like in a box with the game. And so like when you play like the whoever owns the game like gives those out if people accomplish those certain feats or those certain things. That would be I think that would be really cool for a more in-depth game. Granted eventually like you'll run out of them and it might feel like but I spent money on this game, why would I give these pins to someone else cuz they're cool, but um that would be like a
Mm,
way to like people could like show like oh like remember that one game night like I did this thing and got this pin and like
yeah,
I don't know like that's just one random thing that could be a cool thing to incorporate sometime. But
sure. I mean, the thing about board games, it seems like we're in a period now with board games, and I'm just from the outside looking in mostly, but
hmm,
it seems like the growth of board games is kind of crazy right now. It's sort of the Wild West where people are trying
yeah.
just whatever with board games, just all these wild concepts that haven't been tried before, like what we were looking at with Apex Legends or that other game you showed me where it looked like they were trying to do Shadow of the Colossus
Oh,
in
Leviathan
video
Wilds
game
or Leviathan Wild or
in
something. Yeah,
yeah, in a board game
yeah,
style,
that
and
was
it's just
cool.
like anything goes, you know. Um, but it's also possible, you know, I don't know, but it's also possible that the whole reason that they do achievements in video games is because there is no physical aspect to those.
Yeah,
So
yeah,
achievements help to, you know, make you feel like you're actually doing something. Whereas with a board game, you don't really run into that problem because you are physically, like, usually you're engaging with people and you physically have a game that you're like doing real things with in real life.
yeah.
So it
I
might not be necessary for,
yeah.
I'm not sure. It depends,
I think one
probably.
of the coolest things or one of the best ways to utilize that isn't necessarily maybe as as achievements, but more as um like modifiers or challenges for the game. And
Oh,
so it's
yeah.
like, so take Zombicide, for example, with that wave based. It's like, here's a map. It's like goes over a series of waves. You're trying to accomplish a certain objective while surviving a horde of zombies. So there could be things of like, hey, let's play this challenge mode where like maybe you have add modifiers to it where it like makes it, your ammo depletes twice as quickly, or like, you know, you start at a later phase, like a later turn, and so like more zombies are spawning more quickly, or like, and maybe they do that. I don't even know. Maybe they do. Um,
Yeah.
but those
Yeah.
kind of things where it's like, hey, like let's try to beat this thing on like on this mode like tonight or something. I think those kind of things would work well. Um, accomplishing the same kind of thing, you're trying to get people to play your game more and in a different way. Like that's like a lot of achievements. You're like trying to get people to accomplish certain things or play a certain way to do that achievement. So like we could get the spirit of that, which is to add more perceived value or more stuff with the same game by like altering how they play it.
Perceived value. Yeah, that's a perfect way to put
Yeah.
it. Yeah. It should be value too, because that's
Yeah,
the
sure,
thing.
sure.
As people who like to complete games, you know, I'm sure we both run into the game that just has the most worthless achievements that don't add any value.
Yeah.
They're only
Get
a
to the
grind.
first intersection. Done.
Well, yeah, that, and then there's the ones that waste your time, like
Oh
find
yeah.
every single collectible, and we've made 500 of them,
Yeah.
and
No,
without
it's the
without
worst.
a thought in the world, we've
Mm.
just thrown them everywhere, and it's a
Like
nightmare.
it's not fun to find them. And then
No,
when you're missing one, dude, I think Assassin's Creed 2 or something, you had to find all the
yeah,
feathers.
it was Assassin's Creed 2. I specifically remember you going through that game and trying to
I
100%
I and
your mark.
I never got the last feather or whatever it was. I had
Oh,
like
Break
However,
that.
there were a couple hundred, I think, like at least like 200, or I don't know. Maybe it's
That's
100.
my rule. My new rule. Okay, we were talking about the
Yeah,
healthy
yeah.
balance of like going for 100% or not going for the
Uh-huh.
100%. The thing, my rule that I go by, I have to respect the game on some level to go for the
Sure.
100%. I'm not just going to go for the 100% on any game, like
Yeah, no.
because I'm just no way, dude. I it's not worth it. So
You
I
gotta choose
only
how you
go
want to spend
for
your time. Like we were saying, yeah.
yes, exactly. So I only go for 100% if I think that there's like a decent reason to. The only,
Yeah.
although recently, going back to Dishonored, that was a hellish 100%. That was not fun. And I do respect that game.
Yeah.
That game's great. The problem comes when you do the DLC, because
Yeah.
the DLC they made has some of the hardest stuff. It's some of the hardest achievements, probably the hardest achievements outside
Dang.
of perhaps Hollow Knight that I've ever actually gone for.
Dang.
But yeah. Oh my gosh.
That's
But
crazy.
still, after I did it, I still felt really good. I was like, all right. Like,
Nice.
so I don't know.
Yeah. All right. Well, we'll hit this one last question that I forgot
Yeah,
last week, or we didn't. Maybe we didn't have time. I don't know. Whatever it was.
we ran out of time.
Colson, who who commented in Discord saying his name is actually Colton, just so we're aware. Which I kind of assumed. But I just called him by his username, which was Coltzen with the Z.
Pretty cryptic.
Um, yeah, I didn't see that one coming. No, but I assumed it was Colton, but just wanted to use the username. So Colton had another question tagged on last time, and it was specific kind of to our game design type stuff. And it was, how do you guys determine how many cards you need of each, like, item cards? So like how do we determine how many item cards? So for Forge Trials, we all, like, most of the game is cards. It's blueprint cards. And we have that in 3 categories of combat, defense, utility. And we have those, like, all the cards split up between basic, advanced, and mastercraft. And it did not start that way. And right now we have about like 90 some cards. Some of those are duplicates in the earlier range of those, the basic range. But again, it didn't start that way. So we kind of arbitrarily chose at the beginning. We're like, even third split between combat, utility, and defense. And in that, we were like, okay, well, we want basic to feel like there's more of them, and advanced to be kind of in the middle, and mastercraft have fewer. So we were like, okay, we've got, say we have 30. We kind of chose arbitrarily to start, which you kind of have to do. You have to kind of have a feel, a general idea of how big you want your game to be and how much replayability you want to have in your game. And then, be like, I don't know, maybe this number. And then as you work in it more and test it, you'll kind of be like, okay, that's way too many. Or like, hey, we're not getting enough of these things. So it kind of depends on your game. Like some games, you might have 50 cards, but like half of them are duplicates of other cards. So for ours, we kind of just chose a number, started coming up with ideas for those. And then as we were coming up with ideas, we're like, oh, some of these are just kind of doing similar functions. So it kind of seems silly to have, repeats of these. So we either eliminated them or made a duplicate. And we went through a lot of iterations of like how many of each we did. But then as we started playtesting, we're like, oh, combat is not coming up half the time. So it feels like the game is not progressing. And so we then adjusted those ratios. And it was like half of the cards then were combat and 30% defense, 20% utility, or something like that. And so we kind of adjusted those ratios, which then changes like what types of items those are. We have another game that we started working on that like it's about scope too. Like you can't let it get too big, and you got to think, like, it's a lot about thinking about how long you want the game to be, what is the core element of the game, and how many components you want it to have to think of how costly it's going to be. and how big is the box going to be to hold all this in? Because the bigger you go with the box, the more expensive it's going to get to ship and everything like that. There's a lot of like reasonings behind choosing everything. It's not just like, let's have a million cards just so that it's super unique. But like I was saying, this other game we were working on, we had a player board that it was like an RPG type thing when you had different like armor slots. You had like head and chest and arms and hands and legs and feet and rings and trinkets and different things. And we started doing this. And like, as we start doing that, we're like, holy crap, dude, we need like 1,000 cards if we want any variability in this. Because if there's 6 different slots so you need like, you can't just have 5 different helmets in the game. Like you want some variety. If you're gonna have a helmet slot, you need to have like, I don't know, like 15, 20, depending on what the game is. And then if we have 20 variations for each slot, like that duplicates, multiplies. I don't know, it gets big quick, exponentially. Yeah. There we go.
There you go. That's a good word.
Yeah, it increases exponentially the amount of things in the game. And then if you're like, hey, we want different rarities of items. Oh, okay. Right. So you want 10 different common elements, helmets, and another 5-10 different rare and legendary and everything. And then like, hey, we're releasing an expansion with these new armor sets or whatever. Like, dude, it gets crazy. So like,
dominoes pretty quick.
Yeah. So some of it is like, how do you simplify your game to its core fun element? What is the core
necessary elements?
Yeah, like what makes the game fun, and how do you build on? How do you encourage that and build on that? And like,
yeah,
are there things just kind of taking up space? Is it necessary to have that many? And like, my advice would be to always scale back as far as you can to find that core piece, and then slowly build up a little bit from there. But like, always keep cutting things. That's what you should do. So
seems to be a recurring theme that we talk about is scaling back, keeping things manageable.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I bet that you're almost 100% guaranteed to get the number wrong at first.
Oh yeah.
And then when you test, that's when some of that stuff comes out.
You gotta play test. You gotta like, you can come up with a number and try it. It's not gonna work, and then you tweak it and you adjust and everything. So yeah, I'd say just if you have an idea, just be like, you just need to try something, and then that gives you like, the first time you try it, that'll give you a basis for where to how to adjust. Like, oh, we need more, we need less. How to like adjust where you're at from that. You need something to start from to go. So like, yeah, that's my answer to that question. But
good answer.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think, yeah. It just reminded me of something.
Right, then we got to wrap up, Ralph.
I know.
I was about to do the wrap, and you just...
This always happens. I'm sorry.
It's like, well, that's going to be... Well, 1 second here. So let me just tell you this thing I was thinking.
I got this whole can of worms I need to open. No. It's just something that reminded me. You were talking about like always scale back, and it reminded me of a principle that Team Cherry had when they were working on Hollow Knight. They designed their game at its smallest possible functioning state the entire game. So they basically built the game to work on the smallest scale possible, so that, because they didn't know when they were going to run out of money to make the game.
Sure.
So they always build it to where they could call it done at any point, but as long as they still had money to keep developing it, they expanded outwardly from there.
Sure.
So they just kept it really small and then developed outwardly. So that could be an interesting principle you could keep in mind, maybe for board game. I don't know. Yeah,
for sure. Cool. All right. Well, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks again for tuning in to the podcast, everyone. If you want to find out more about what we're doing, keep listening to this podcast and or watching on the YouTubes. Yeah, and follow us. I always say follow us on the social media, on the socials. But really, we pretty much just post on Instagram, and that kind of forwards to Facebook. But I don't do anything on Facebook, and we don't use Twitter. So follow us on Instagram for posts, some visuals of art and things as we get them, as well as go to our website and find a link to the Discord where you can ask questions like Coltzin did, as well as chat with us, whatever it is. So thanks again for being here, and we'll see you all next time.
Yep. Thanks, everyone.
You weren't going to do your other closing line from the other YouTube guy. Well, yeah, I guess that's it. Or whatever it was.
Yeah. Well, so that's about it. See ya.
Bye.